In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our...
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White. Tonight on America in Black and White, we explore a part of community life that most people don't think about until something goes wrong. Yet it shapes the safety, dignity, and livability of every neighborhood in this country. Code compliance is more than citations, ordinance, and regulations. At its best, it is the front line of community care. It is where policy meets people, where enforcement meets empathy, and where leadership can transform entire cities. Our guest tonight embodies that transformation. Brian C. Morris is not just a director of code compliance. He is a visionary redefining what community standards, neighborhood revitalization, and public service can look like. With more than 13 years of local government and over 20 years of real estate and development, Brian has built a national reputation for innovation, compassion, and results. From Dallas to South Fulton to Garland, he has led teams, rebuilt systems, and created programs that don't just enforce the rules, they uplift people. His work reminds us that strong communities are not accidental. They are built house by house, block by block, relationship by relationship. And tonight, we get to hear the story behind the leader, the man shaped by Black history, inspired by Marcus Garvey, Barack Obama, and Malcolm X, and committed to using his gifts to strengthen the very communities he served. This is going to be powerful. This is going to be real. This is America in Black and White, and let's bring Brian C. Morris to the stage. Hello, sir.
Hey, good evening, Mr. King. How you doing?
I'm doing just excellent. Welcome to the show.
Oh man, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so is there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we get into the show?
Well, just want to say that I appreciate the warm introduction. And man, it's just a pleasure to be among you all, man. Welcome to all of the listeners here. I'm looking to just bring some insight into what we do. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on what we do in code enforcement and how it affects our communities. And I'm just looking forward to the conversation and you all joining us on this journey.
Well, I thank you so very kindly. And what we're going to start this off is I'd like to give people the opportunity to learn a little bit more about who you are and how you got to be where you are today. Let's start with who was Brian Morris before the titles, leadership roles, and the accolades?
Great question. Before the titles, the leadership, and the accolades, I was uh, born and raised in south of Atlanta, in College Park, Georgia. Just grew up as a 90s, 80s, 90s kid, listening to hip hop and learning my way around the city of Atlanta during a transformational time, a historic time, when we were around so much history, so much culture. When you talk about Outkast and Monica and TLC, all the musical genres, so def, we were just flooded with that culture and that Black excellence. along with being in the epicenter of what was becoming Black Mecca, right? With the AUC centers that were, you know, just guideposts for us. So I was privileged to join, to grow up in the birthplace of civil rights and in the resurgence and emergence of Black culture during the 80s and the 90s. And so I was a part of that culture, just growing up in that era, and just trying to make my way. I went to graduate from high school and went to FAMU for a brief period of time, and had a great time down there. Had a great experience in HBCU culture. Much respect to my FAMU Rattlers. Um, and from there, I just matriculated right into the real estate field right out of college. At that point, had a strong entrepreneurial spirit, and just wanted to put those skills to use in working for myself. Um, Now, somewhere along the line, you all remember the historic economic crash in '07, '08 in real estate. And I was greatly affected by that in my business. And I had to pivot at that point, as we all do. You have a choice to either continue on a path, and you have choices to make at that crossroads. And at that point, that's when I joined local government and put some of those real estate and construction skills to use. And I became a code enforcement officer. And from there, the rest has been history. I started a family in between there. I have a wife and a son who's now 14, my pride and joy. And we've just been building this as we go. And I've been blessed to work with some amazing teams and some great communities. And we've been able to together have a lasting impact in those communities that we served in.
Well, before I ask my next question, there is, I guess, there's someone speaking to you here in the chat. Emmanuel is on the screen there. He says, "Yo."
Hey, Emmanuel, how you doing, sir? Thanks for joining us.
And so, can you tell us what early experiences shaped your understanding of community and responsibility?
Mm. Man, another great question. So it's interesting how life, you know, your experiences during life can shape you in ways that you don't realize until much later. Um, One of the things that sticks with me from when I was heavily, knee deep into the real estate renovation, construction, remodeling, and we were going to some of these historic Black neighborhoods, like the historic West End, where my big mama is from, and we were revitalizing these beautiful 1920s houses. And what it made me realize is the impact and the importance of community. The fact that us as a people learning to take care of our own community is essential. We often look at the term gentrification, and we talk about that as a bad thing, which I get. In some cases, it is, Charles. The flip side to that coin is when I look back at when I went to go visit my big mama in the '80s. That was during the height of the crack epidemic, and we couldn't see how beautiful that neighborhood was because it was overrun with those plagues of the community at the time. It was not well kept. There was not a lot of pride in those communities, although it was 100% Black owned. Now you fast forward, you go back into that community 10, 15, 20 years later, and those houses are now immaculate, beautiful, and worth $500,000. So what it taught to me, reflecting on my real estate path along with my code enforcement path, is that if we take pride and ownership in our own communities, we don't have to worry about gentrification. We don't have to worry about anybody coming to take anything from us because we can benefit from the value that comes with ownership and economic empowerment. So, that kind of ties both of my two career paths together, and how we can influence our own neighborhoods, and just by taking good care of where we live, taking pride of ownership, and not letting anyone dissuade us from doing that.
Brian, I want you to answer this question for me because you make a very, very good point when you talk about that. And the thing that kind of has me baffled right now that I'm not, well, I understand it, but I'm not actually able to validate what I'm saying. That is, we're about community here, and that's why we have you here, because you've done a great job when it comes to dealing with the community and helping the community to stay stable as best as possible. But when we talk about what you were talking about, the West End here in Atlanta, um, you know, I'm not from Atlanta, but I understand the historical context of that particular area. And when I look at that now and understand, like most people didn't understand, like people didn't understand what it was to primarily to do a lot of the do's and don'ts when it come to taking control of your community and owning your community and just making sure that everything about your community was your community. When I look at that area now and what was happening, this has probably been since you left. I don't know how long ago since you moved to Texas, but now the area definitely doesn't look the same.
No.
The revitalization is not revitalization, it's actually gentrification. And those people have been forced to move because they couldn't afford taxes. But I don't know if you know about this or not, but as of a couple of months ago, you have major corporations that have set foot in that area. And now they're buying up all of that property and pushing the people out. And so when you think about that, is that not because a lot of people didn't quite understand maybe what it was to deal with real estate and like having to try to do what's best to push back and to keep their properties being pushed out of their properties? What are some of the things that you can tell our people that's watching now how this works and what they should be doing in advance?
Wow, that's a great question, Charles, and a lot to unpack with that. You have so many different competing interests when you talk about real estate development, gentrification versus redevelopment, right? And it's a thin line between those two. My personal view on that is that as a people, no matter what color you are, certain forces in the market are going to come. They're going to, if the environment is attractive enough. One of the things I learned about from the development side is that, a lot of times you hear people saying, well, hey, we want a Whole Foods in our area, right?
Right.
Joe, we want this. Why are we always getting a dollar store? Why are we always getting a Family Dollar and a liquor store, right? XYZ. So from the development side, we learned that these companies have formulas. And so Trader Joe's, for instance, their formula may say they want within a 3 square mile radius, they want salaries of $140,000 average per household. They want a 40% college degree rate, right, in that area. And of course, they look at other demographics, density, crime, and those other variables. They won't move into your area unless you can produce that first. If you don't have 140,000 household income on average in that area, they won't move in there. Forget about it. They're going to Johns Creek. They're going to a different area, whatever your suburb is, the nice part of town. That's where they're going. And so it's a double-edged sword, because as we boost the prospects of those areas, as we increase our education, our economic power in those areas, it brings development. The best advice I see, I don't think you can stop that, because those market forces are untouchable. They're gonna come. If those numbers fit, they're gonna come in that area. Our best advice is to be a part of it, right? If your property goes up from $100,000 when it was the hood, if it was $100,000 then, and somebody comes and brings you 500,000, you can capitalize on that investment. That's a return on your investment. Now, the downside to that is the sense of community, and I understand that fully, right? This is where, in my case, Big Mama raised us. I went over to the West End, and she kept us all over there. So there's a sense of community that's that's displaced when that happens. I just don't know if we can stop that. The best we can do is try to advocate for policies to help, and this goes back to the code enforcement role, um, programs that will help elderly citizens to stay in their homes, right? How can we get your front yard manicured? How can we get some minor painting and some infrastructure and some things done to help you not be taken from your home in that way due to non-compliance? And then, of course, you have government programs similar to the city of Atlanta where they will pause some of the increase in taxes for senior citizens. So more progressive cities are implementing those safeguards so that you're not, if you choose to take advantage of that 300% increase in your property value, that's great. You can go retire and you take that, and that's a family nest egg that you can pass down. But if you choose to stay, then we want to make it possible and not impossible for you to be able to stay in the home that you plan to grow, live, and even die in if you want to. Right. So it's a fine line, Charles, in trying to encourage redevelopment, because what comes with redevelopment is less crime. It comes more resources, the things that we all want. Right. But also with that comes increased property taxes and increased expectations on how you need to maintain your area so it's not considered a slum.
Now, this is now what I'm about to say is not what you do in code enforcement, but I will say this. I think that even when we have some neighborhoods that are still valuable with those checkpoints that you mentioned, they still would get those stores. But my premise is, if we knew better about our communities and we kept and built our communities, we don't have to have those stores. So why support them when we could actually build our own stores? The thing is, and again, this is not what you do in code enforcement.
Let's talk about it. I like the question though, 'cause I got something in mind that popped up. So let's
see, because this is the thing, that when we want to do our own thing, we're kept from doing it because we're not allowed to do it. Now that's dealing with local, county, and state governments. Because if they allowed, and if we wanted to build all of our own grocery stores, our retail stores, things of that nature, and keep out the cheap stores and the stores that are tearing down the neighborhoods, that would mean that we wouldn't be giving them our dollars. And so that's the whole premise. The premise is to tear down and to destroy our communities, to force you to go and get what they want you to have. That's the problem.
Man, that's a very insightful point. And so you led in the intro when we talked earlier. I told you one of my, I wanted to dig a little bit deeper when you asked me who inspired me, who in Black history inspired me, and one of my heroes is Marcus Garvey.
Right.
And for that reason of self-determination and do for self.
Right.
And so that's an issue that goes back hundreds of years, right? Why we're not in a position of economic empowerment where we can have more ownership. And so that's a discussion I have with people often, particularly when let's say we have an uprising. We've had some uprisings in the past couple of years when something happens, whether it's police brutality or whether it's some type of injustice or perceived injustice that we feel. And it's the same thinking behind it. People often ask, well, why do we burn up our own community? Why do we tear up our own stuff? I hear that often, and I understand it. I get that. But the key word is our.
Yes.
It's a sense of ownership. The fact that we don't have a sense of ownership in general, it leads to that response. I'm not burning up mine. I'm not tearing up my stuff because this is not my stuff.
Right.
That goes back. That's a huge issue when it comes to our sense of ownership and the fact that, if we're able to come together, any community, right? I see it with my Latino brothers and sisters. They're able to come together, and I respect and admire that. And we need to emulate that, right? Not out of a sense of any type of separation or bigotry, but just everybody needs their own. We need to be able to go spend Black dollars if we choose to, or white, wherever we want to go. but we don't have those options because we haven't done the work to collectively put ourselves in a position to be able to own blocks and shopping centers and neighborhoods. We haven't done that work. Doesn't mean it's too late to do it, but that's what time we need to be on if we want to have that kind of change and have more of a say when it comes to who comes into our neighborhood. You can't put a Family Dollar on this area, on this parcel, on this street in Charles if you own that land.
Right.
Right. You get to say who comes there. I don't want a liquor store. I don't want a Dollar Tree. I want what I want, right? I want to open this up to whatever is best serving the community. And we have that say if we have that economic firepower.
Well, I hope that the people in that part of Atlanta are ready because they landed here in Atlanta like about maybe a month ago. And so it's about to totally take shape in an ugly way. And so I'm just waiting to see what the city as a whole and in general, especially for that area, what the people are going to do. Because this deserves some counteraction because we all know what's happening right about now. And it's not the first time and it's not something new because, you know, you've got corporations coming all from places like Canada, Japan, China, Russia. All these places are landing in places here around the country and many metropolitan cities and creating subdivisions and only leasing the houses, but people can't own them. But people that wanted the property, they won't sell the property to them.
Man, that's a huge issue. I dealt with that and you mentioned South Fulton. So South Fulton is in Georgia.
Yes,
That's
I
where
used to live there.
yes, sir. So I served there for about 4.5, almost 5 years as they were beginning. That's the newest city in Georgia. It's about 8 years old now. Going on 9. So that was a huge issue in code enforcement, and we fought it there. The corporations were so bad that, and they had so much money, Charles. Here's the thing, you know, rewinding back a step further, time back to 07, 08, right? When the market crashed and the hedge funds, and you had millions and millions and billions of dollars that came in and bought up this real estate in order to sell and to lease it. And so we saw some of that once that ran out, once that supply of existing inventory ran out, then they saw it was so lucrative. Well, hell, we'll just build an entire subdivision and we'll put it for lease. So their pockets were so long that there was a small subdivision in South Fulton off Butler Road that they forgot about. And the grass grew up as high as tall as me and you. And it was fresh outside. And these were brand new $300,000, $400,000 houses. And when we finally got in contact with the owner, we put a belt to him, right? We put a boot to him, charged him some money, had him in court and holding him accountable. You know, their excuse to us was like, hey, we have thousands of properties. I forget the number, 20, 30,000 properties around the country. We forgot about this $4 or $5 million we had sitting over here in this little city called South Fulton. So that's what we're up against when it comes to that. There's been some talk of federal legislation limiting corporate entities that partake in that practice. But you know how money talks in government, right? Lobbyists rule the day. So it's something that we combat every day, and it reduces our opportunity to own a part of the American dream, which is home ownership, because there's less supply. Prices go up, they corner the market. So it's a pretty vicious cycle when you're talking about, you know, that corporate ownership of single family property on a large, massive scale.
So we got a few comments here in the chat, especially one for Miss Mina. I don't want her to think that we forgot about her because she said more than one comment. I don't think she think we was listening. But this first one here I put on the screen. This says code enforcement is a driver of community improvement and economic development.
Absolutely. And that gentleman right there is one of the best. He knows that well. I know that company, Metric One Training, is one of the finest in the business. And absolutely right. We are a key economic driver for economic development, right, and community change. No doubt about it. Without many cities would not exist. We're silent. We're behind the scenes to a certain extent. A lot of people don't understand fully what we do. But once I often say once you lock up the bad guys and you put out the fires, if you don't have code, you don't have a city. You have chaos in your city. Tall grass, trash, blighted properties, dilapidated structures. So economic development all ties into that. Reduction in crime ties into that. If you have blighted structures, you open up the door to what they call, the young folks call a trap house, right? You open up the door to all kinds of criminal activities that take place, and it has an echo effect, right? It's contagious. Good behavior is contagious. If your neighbor plants a flower garden, your significant other may see it out there, and now they put the pressure on you to go plant a flower garden and put some mulch out, right? Because the neighbors are looking good. If you on the other side, if your neighbor is not cutting the grass and they have junk vehicles, they're working on their cars, right, then your incentive may decrease. It does decrease to go out and really take pride in your neighborhood, because when you step outside, you're looking at a lot of blight when you walk out. So it's all contagious, and it all has an economic development impact, and an impact on the strength and the character of the community.
And we got this from Miss Mina. She's putting 5 or 6 comments in here. She says hello, and she was saying hello again. Say hi or like. She wanted to say hello.
Thanks for joining us, Mina.
So can you tell us, growing up, what did neighborhood mean to you?
Neighborhood, as a kid, growing up, teenager, it was a sense of community, right? It was a little bit different, I would say, than it is in most places now. We all talk about going outside and coming back when the street light came on, and having neighbors around you that could hold you accountable, where you knew that whatever you did when you were out there in the streets, right, playing, doing whatever kids do, that is going to meet you or beat you back to your home, and you likely would have a belt switch or some other type of whipping device waiting on you when you got back if you acted a fool out there. So that community, that stability, really meant a lot. When I was growing up, I moved to Clayton County. For those that don't know, it's not the right now. Clayton County is the largest Black population in Georgia by percentage, and I failed to mention South Fulton is the largest Black city in the country at 92-93%. Right, largest Black city in the country. Right now, Clayton County is the largest Black county in the state, I want to say, by percentage. It wasn't like that when I moved there. Right. So we've all heard the phenomenon of white flight. And so grew up in a mixed community, and we saw it shift from when I got there in the early 80s to when I left there in the early 90s. Dramatic shift. It went from 1090 to close to 90-10. And those that hadn't left is because they couldn't leave just yet. Right. So we've seen that effect on our neighborhoods. But all in all, it was still a stable place. I think there's something that's missing in a lot of neighborhoods right now. The way they're designed, the way they're put together, it doesn't lend to a sense of community. In some cases, it's a money grab, right? On the development side, the developer will take a piece of land. It's 40 acres. And they will clear cut it, and they will make it as flat as possible, and they will cram as many houses as they can on a quarter or third of an acre or eighth of an acre lot, right? So it's the character, some of that disappears when you do that to a neighborhood. It's just a cookie cutter type of situation. So that's one of the biggest differences I see in how we came up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and how the neighborhoods have changed a little bit.
So, when did you first realize you had a calling towards public service?
Great question. I think it was somewhere during the journey, right? As I mentioned, I took code enforcement as a job, right? Because we were, I just had my son Charles in 2011, and to that point, I was still hustling, right? I'm trying to make an entrepreneurial, dime out of a dollar out of a dime, right? That was my focus. I would never work. I would never go work a 9 to 5. That was my mindset. And my wife thought otherwise, right? Particularly when my son came. She's like, dude, you need to go get a regular paycheck and insurance and all those things, right? We're making ends meet, but it's barely. Rent's due on the 1st, and you come in, with some money on the 30th. So, so I took the job to take the job. I needed it. I needed some stability, and somewhere down the line, I fell in love with code, and I saw it was misunderstood, it was undervalued, underappreciated, underfunded, under everything. But I saw the impact that we could have, and this is just me as an officer. I started out boots on the ground for several years, and I saw how we could take a community and just with the educational part of it, right? Education before citation. That's a phrase that was coined by my brother in code, Anthony Mullins. Just by educating people on why we're doing what we're doing. Why is it important for you to keep your property clean and up to code and look in a certain way? And you could come back in a matter of a year from a neighborhood that you would call a C neighborhood. I would grade them, right? A loose grade. You could take a C neighborhood, and after being in that neighborhood for 6 months to a year, that C neighborhood now is looking like a B plus neighborhood. Property values are going up. There's more pride. It's no longer the slums. You're by indirectly chasing out some of the negative elements that may be in that neighborhood because they stick out like a sore thumb now. The trap house and the houses of ill repute, right? They're now sticking out because everybody is in line. So, they stick out like a sore thumb. So just seeing the impact and having my elders and seniors in the community and just community, just residents in general, making those comments on how they appreciate the work that we're doing. And I saw that it was an impact and something that needs to have a larger voice to it, more resources allocated to code enforcement professionals, and we need advocates for that. So I saw the need, Charles, and I saw the impact that we could have if done correctly, and the negative impact when it's done incorrectly.
Let's transition over to your work as Director of Code Compliance in Garland. What does a Director of Code Compliance actually do on a day-to-day basis?
Yes, sir. So many hats, man, many hats. As you see, I'm still at work now. It's 6 o'clock. Well, it's 5:30 Central Time. So I look at it as a business, right? So my entity, being the Director of Code Compliance, or wherever I'm in that director seat, is the CEO of Code Compliance, right? So I'm personnel management, policies and procedures, budget management, budget allocation. So I'm the liaison between City Hall and my team. And so my mission, anywhere that I go, my goal is to create the best code enforcement department in the country. That's my standard. I come into that seat with that standard in mind. That's what we want to do. And so it's training the team, it's untraining the team, it's training the council members and the different stakeholders in the community about what we do, educating them about what we do and what we don't do, what we can do and what we can't do, right? What our limitations are. So it's about relationship building with my team, vertically and horizontally. My peer departments that I rely on to work in partnership with us, um, supporting my team, and also carrying out the vision of my leadership, my city manager, my mayor, and council, carrying out their vision and translating that vision to our team and bring it into effect. So it's about implementation. It's about uh, ultimately getting results at the end of the day and making an impact for the community.
So, what makes Garland unique compared to the other cities you've served?
That's a great question. So every city is unique. So, my first city was a town of 17,000, Fairburn, Georgia. Moved out to South Fulton, Georgia, right next door, 120,000, up and coming city. 90% black, all black staff, all black council and mayor, right? Our former mayor called it Wakanda, right? That was his running joke. It was Wakanda forever. So different dynamics, right? Different culture. I grew up in that area. I know the streets like the back of my hand. I know the people. I know the culture. So next stop was moving out to Dallas. Monstrosity of a city, ninth biggest city in the country, at 1.3, 1.4 million people. We had the largest code enforcement team in the country.